and welcome to Virtual Concert Hall's live music channel. My name is Chris Au, and I have with me the co-founder of Virtual Concert Halls, Anna Ospenskaya, and we will be hosts for today's show. This is really exciting, and this is part 2 of the documentary of Beethoven Symphony No. 5, written and narrated by Lawrence Rapchak, created by New Media Productions Worldwide and Virtual Concert Halls, and produced by Architects of Music.
Music is liquid architecture. Architecture is frozen music. Who said that? I think that was Goethe. And this is the aspect and the angle which those films take and peek inside the Beethoven Symphonies.
Yeah, and we are proud to be connecting musicians and audiences in real-time musical performances and live programs around the globe.
Anyway, Beethoven's brilliance really takes over now as he begins to grow new themes and melodic patterns from the tiny four-note cell, which begins to change. A descending third, here's another third, prominent thirds, but it changes to accommodate the shape of the expanding melody. Here's a fourth, here's a mournful minor second. Then Beethoven chains together a series of these seconds to grow the melody, leading to our big cadence, ending on G, and then the unexpected F minor. But now the mysterious murmuring continues from top to bottom of the string section. The first violins, second violins, violas, cello and bass. This outlines this chord, a G dominant seventh chord, with the flatted note on top. We saw a lot of this in the Fourth Symphony. This passage takes the concept of symphonic writing to a whole new level as the music continues to evolve into a major symphonic exposition. Now the interval is a fourth. Now it's a third. The shape of the motive is whatever it needs to be, as long as the basic elemental rhythm bop, 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 continues to propel the music. And now a series of suspensions like so. And you remember in Haydn's Symphony 102 how he used the normally expressive appoggiaturas to energize the music. Here, well, Beethoven uses this same appoggiatura, this suspension though. The appoggiatura leans on the main note. It's very expressive. And if you slow the music way down, there's your appoggiatura that suspends. Another one. And another one as it ascends. Another. But instead, Beethoven uses this sequence to drive the music ahead into the first thunderous passage of the work, straight C minor, driven by the repeated motive bop, 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 in the strings. And that tempestuous sounding chord is none other than our diminished seventh chord, guaranteed to increase the tension level in any dramatic music. And these diminished seventh chords can be pretty tricky. They can resolve in a number of ways harmonically, as we will see. In this case, this chord resolves like so. And we find ourselves in the heroic key of E flat major, and Beethoven wisely assigns this rousing passage to the French horns, and the effect is stunning. What's more, the motive has changed again. The interval is now a descending fifth, and there are two new notes added. These. So we now have three short notes and three long notes. We will call this the horn version of the motive. And even though our heads may be spinning with everything that Beethoven has done up to this point, he's still following the traditional sonata form of the classical era. And we've now arrived in the new key for the secondary material. And here the contrast in key is very effective, since Beethoven has moved to what we call the relative major key of C minor. You just slip up the C minor scale a few steps, and you arrive in E flat major. It's called the relative major because both C minor and E flat major have 3 flats in the key signature. I used to play in 3 flats. I got thrown out of all of them. Anyway, so we're now in E flat major, and the lovely lilting grace of this secondary theme could not be more welcome. And you heard how Beethoven uses sequences to extend the melody. But did you also notice what was happening in the cellos and basses? This. There it is, the omnipresent 4 notes now serving as the bass line, and maintaining just a hint of the music's tension. Again, this is real symphonic writing, and that underlying tension now leads to a new extension of the lyrical theme. And as it repeats, 2 things happen to ramp up the intensity. Harmonically, what else? A few diminished 7th chords. And our powerhouse motive in the bass. But as I said, those diminished 7th chords can lead anywhere. And here they take us out of the gloom, back to our heroic E flat major. And pow! The main motive has now become a dance. The long note isn't there. It's a continuous stream now of short notes in a new melodic version with appoggiaturas on the strong beats. And the riotous energy takes over. And a chugging bass line. And just as the first big climax had thundered out the main motive in C minor, the same thing happens here, but now in the joyous key of E flat major to conclude the exposition with full, emphatic repetitions of the motive. Here is the whole passage. And the emotional journey of this music, from the stark, ominous, shadowy, to unbridled, life-affirming joy in less than 90 seconds, is something that no other composer would ever have attempted, much less accomplished. So now you have some basic idea of how Beethoven created this awesome exposition. And here it is.
It's so dramatic. It's so incredible. I love the way Larry talks about this, because it really does add the little details to what the architecture of the piece really is. And there's this incredible drama about it. And I want to ask you, Dr. Anna, when you talk about Beethoven's music or the great composers, how do you illustrate drama? Do you play it for them? Do you do something similar to what Larry does?
Absolutely, I try. However, what Larry does cannot be replicated. Absolutely, it's unique and incredible. And the way he presents the elements of the Beethoven's architecture really does change the way you hear it. See how the film is structured here. He explains each element and how they are connected, interconnected, how the Beethoven builds that architecture of the opening of the symphony and the exposition. So we get to the end of the exposition, and more is to come. The development section is building on what was exposed in the exposition,
Right.
and that is going to unravel a whole magnificent picture of the planning which Beethoven had in mind. But the way Larry puts it out, building block by building block, then when you hear it going through in very short 4 minutes of the exposition, you really start feeling that those building blocks at play. And and your question is absolutely legit. When I'm teaching music, I want to give the students the insight into how the great piece of, like the symphony or the Beethoven sonatas or anything like that, how that was architected or constructed, built by the composer, because that's the musical language, and the composers, of course, they don't just start writing with the first note and then just by some kind of magic arrive at the last note of the piece. There's a lot of planning going into that because it's a story. There's a concept of the story, and there's a development of the story, and of course each composer puts in a lot of planning into how the musical language illustrates the elements of the story. There is protagonist, there's antagonist, and there's a conflict, and there's a resolution. All of those elements, just like in a regular novel, when you read the novel, you just follow the plot and you enjoy the language, right? But when you write the novel, you don't enjoy the plot and language, you create it. So that creative process is maybe relevant to people who are reading novels, but it's very, very relevant to people who are trying to interpret the music, to perform the piece based on that canvas which the composer created. So in order
Do you find that there are other pieces of music where you're teaching or you're demonstrating that replicates this sort of incredible architecture that you have discovered in your interpretation? Because there's probably pieces you know better than others, which,
of course,
and you admire for their architecture. Is there another piece of music that sort of is similar in this sort of breadth of architecture?
I would say every masterpiece by every composer is. And that's what makes a masterpiece. The incredible preparation before you actually set out to write the notes. The incredible creation of a bank of materials and the work of a composer. I'm astounded by how people even compose music, because there's so much of collection of materials and thinking and architecting. You don't always approach performing music the same way, of course not. But I found that like peeling that onion and getting to the core, and where the composer's idea is like a red line, evident through the architecture of the piece, how this element plays out in the next section and how it's compared in the next section. When you investigate that and then get to the core of understanding of what that plot and the musical story, I'm talking about motives and accompaniments and different themes appearing in different instruments, and of course, let's say a theme appears in the violins and then it appears in the flutes, it sounds different. So the composers create that red line story of each element going through the steps. So, but then once you kind of get the idea of what that plot is, and some composers supplied their planning of the compositions with some comments and notes, and you can see them in their manuscripts now. Thankfully, manuscripts are available, so you can get like behind the curtain and see what their notes were.
Right.
But then from that understanding, first of all, to me, that discovery is extremely fascinating. It's almost like bringing the composer himself alive and getting almost like a conversation with him. Oh, this is what you meant in there, but really, does it, but that aside, when I'm building my own interpretation based on that exploration which I've done, then sometimes I discover really surprising possibilities in there, like counter climaxes, which I can include in my interpretation, and that makes my interpretation unique because of what I discovered while working through understanding of how the composer actually planned put the architecture in their pieces. Now, speaking of students, that's a very legitimate question. Do I put all of this complexity in the 8-year-old's mind? Of course not. So what I do, usually, depending on the level and what piece they play, let's say they play Sonatina by Beethoven. Now, Beethoven's Sonatina will have all those elements described by Lawrence in his presentation here, only in a much more smaller scale and much more clear, concise, and less complicated way. So when I work with the students, to me, that aspect of music is so fascinating that I can't help sharing it with the students. The only thing is I do it as appropriate for the level of pieces which they play.
Wonderful. Well, it's really great to hear the sort of teacher's perspective of it. And obviously, as a marvelous interpreter of great masterpieces yourself, it's
thank you, Chris. You're very sweet.
Yeah, well, this is, I think it's right to give you praise as a educator as well as someone who interprets great music. And now we're presenting great music interpreted and presented by Larry Rapchak. So it's a really kind of a big cycle coming back. And with that, I want to give a big thanks to the team at Virtual Concert Halls, New Media Productions, and Architects of Music, and Larry Rapchak, of course, for putting this all together. This is really an incredible adventure that they are embarked on. And yeah, do you have any other words to say about this? Yeah.
Well, I just want to invite people to dive into this and with an open mind. Yes, there's a lot of terminology which Lawrence Rapchak is using in there, but he explains it all and in very accessible terms. You don't have to memorize the terminology, and I know there's a lot of people out there who are just spooked by mere thought of diving into music theory. This is not music theory, this is music architecture. And just like in any house, you don't have to be a professional architect to understand that this is the first floor, second floor, third floor, and that's where your hallways are. He really puts it in that kind of vivid visual and very clear presentation. I think it's very accessible to anyone who is interested to just know how the creative mind of Beethoven worked.
Right. Well, if you are interested, please check out our future and current events. We're going to go through many different parts of this documentary, even just on the Fifth Symphony. We have many other symphonies, the Magnificent Nine, that we're going to present to our audiences. And this is all part of Virtual Concert Halls, as well as our mission to share great music and insight with the rest of the world. Please check out our website at soundexpressivacompetition.com. And for other productions and to learn about us, please go to virtualconcerthalls.com. And with that, we'll say bye for now, and we'll see you next time for part 3.
Part 3 will be on Sunday at 12 noon, and every subsequent part will go live on Sundays and Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Standard. And with that, we say goodbye.
See you later.
No matter where you are or who you are, music connects us all. We started with a dream, but now we are paving the future. Welcome to the Sound Espressiva Global Competition. Fully virtual, yet bringing musicians closer together than ever before, now on a global scale. True live, inclusivity, diversity, connection, community. an extraordinary array of judges. Get noticed by companies all over the world. Prizes, scholarships, performance opportunities. Apply to be a part of the most exciting congregation of artists like nothing you've ever seen before. We guarantee quality and leave no musician behind. We can't wait to hear you on the virtual stage.